Doug Drysdale, CEO, Cybin, on the Dales Report.
All right, I am happy to be joined with the CEO of Cybin, Mr. Doug Drysdale. How are you, sir?
Hi, Shad. I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Obviously, a very big week for you guys. Tomorrow, the New York Stock Exchange, Cybin will begin trading. How excited are you? Obviously, a lot of work's been put into this over the course of the last few months, but needless to say, a very, very big day for Cybin.
Yeah, we're very excited. And, the team has done a tremendous job. We're still a fairly small organization, so we have a lot of people wearing many hats. And I have to thank all of them for all the hard work that has gone into getting us to this stage.
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, a lot of news obviously circulating around the company the last couple of weeks. Biggest private placement, money raised $45 million Canadian for any psychedelic company. Talk to me about that. Why was there so much interest pertaining to it? And obviously, the timing seems to be pretty bang on, knowing all the news that's unfolded within the space with the U.S. election over the past week.
Yeah, that's true. The timing couldn't be better for us. Look, I think in these situations where there's a lot of investor interest, it's always about the team. And we're very fortunate at Cybin to have a team that has got a really strong, proven track record of success.
Yeah.
Building startups, running clinical studies, raising capital. But it's more than that too. We've taken a pretty innovative approach. So it's not just putting active ingredient in a capsule. We've been thoughtful about how we improve the patient experience with our sublingual film.
Okay.
Should provide a faster onset of action and allow us to give, allow us to give less active ingredient while still getting a therapeutic effect. So I think the combination of the team and that innovation, and we've shown investors that we can be really nimble. We've got a pretty creative approach, starting our clinical studies in Jamaica first, and then we plan to file an IND in the US in parallel. If we'd done it the traditional way, would have taken 5 or 6 more months. So we've saved a lot of time and getting us to market a lot faster, we hope.
Yeah, timing's everything. And it appears, as I said earlier, perfect timing. Obviously, Initiative 81 and Measure 109 last week in Washington, D.C. and Oregon. Overwhelming amount of support for both ballot initiatives, as much as 76.5% approval. What does this do for the sector, and most importantly for Cybin, knowing that you're going public tomorrow? But how much should investors read into, the decriminalization of psychedelics in 2 states?
Look, I think it's tremendous positive forward momentum in this space. And I think the Measure 109 in particular really helps everyone working in this space.
Yep.
I think the approach is very sensible and smart. And when you add it to the actions of Health Canada, allowing compassionate use, access to psilocybin, and when you add it to the FDA's approach, granting breakthrough therapy status, it's clear that there's more and more acceptance of the potential for psilocybin as a therapeutic in mental illness.
Doug, from my understanding, you had even more demand during your private placement. So in that case, why not take more if the interest was so hot? What went into the decision, obviously, to cap it at 45 million?
Yeah, it's always about striking a balance. We're very flattered by the amount of interest that we had. But you don't want to have undeployed capital sitting on the balance sheet for too long. So I think we took enough to give Cybin a good long runway, and also to power our clinical studies, potentially ability now to add additional sites to speed up recruitment and to spread the recruitment around. In addition to that, we're pretty active on the business development and M&A front. So this gives us a war chest to go and potentially pick up other assets that are being developed by small companies in this space.
Talk to me about the space itself. You're a CEO of a company and the people you speak to on a day-to-day basis. Walk me through, what is some of the stuff you hear every single day with regards to psychedelics? Why is this gaining so much interest and so much momentum, given obviously the circumstances that we're currently in with life itself? But beyond that, from a pure business aspect, why is this garnering so much attention?
Well, part of it is timing, as you said, Chad. So look, we're in this pandemic situation. I think there's definitely a heightened awareness of mental illness and the stresses that this pandemic has created, both economic and mental as well. And I think people are looking for some help. They're looking for assistance. And when you look at the treatment of depression over the last decade or so, there's been really very little innovation.
Right.
And then along comes psychedelics finally after 50 years of being on the shelf. And they really have the potential to potentially, and I hate to use this, don't like using this word lightly, but potentially cure or depression, or maybe give people long periods of remission. It's unlike anything else in the treatment of that disease. So I think people are just crying out for help, frankly.
Yeah. Well, you bring up the whole pharmaceutical angle and how it's, been kind of, I guess, stale towards some of these initiatives that people are trying to achieve in the psychedelic space. You've spent 3 decades building pharmaceutical and biotech companies across the US and Europe. Can you share a bit with my viewers just the journey that obviously you learned and what brought you to Cybin?
Yeah, 30 years in healthcare. Gosh, it goes by really quickly.
I bet.
A dozen years and as CEO, 3 different companies. One I founded in early 2008 with a group of investors, and then 2 companies that were turnaround situations, a private one and a public one. The public one we turned from a cough and cold business into a specialty pharma company that's focused on CNS disorders, so migraine, insomnia, pain. But my interest in mental health came much, much earlier in my career. When I first left high school, I worked in a hospital lab.
Okay.
And so I'd be in the lab in the middle of the night doing blood tests, and generally from folks that are coming into the ER. And the bulk of the admissions in the middle of the night were teenage suicide attempts and drug overdoses. So, depression and addiction, a sad story, right? But that's what Cybin is focused on, depression and addiction. I also signed up during this pandemic, at a time, as I say, when mental health issues are a heightened awareness. So it's just a privilege to be able to contribute to the space.
Makes sense. Is this a trend that you'll see, executives within the pharmaceutical industry making this transition into this space like yourself?
I think that's likely. It's odd for me first coming into the space. I didn't see it as anything other than pharmaceuticals, because to me these are molecules that have to go through traditional drug development and approval process. But I can see the distinction that people draw. I think as you start to see companies making progress in this space and clinical studies getting published over and above the many that have already been published, then it'll just become more integrated. I mean, at the end of the day, when we look at our last financing round, 90 to 95% of the investors that came into that round were blue chip US biotech fund. So clearly those investors see this as biotech as pharma and not as anything that's kind of controversial.
Last thing I want to bring up is you begin trading tomorrow. If I'm an investor, what's going to grab my excitement? Obviously the clinical trials that you alluded to that's going on in Jamaica with the oral dissolvable thin film strips. Why is that garnering so much attention? Why does it make it effective? And what does that ultimately make you, a leader within the space?
Yeah, look, I think as I mentioned, the innovation, I think, makes a lot of sense. Rather than just putting active ingredient in the capsule, let's think about how we give the best possible treatment to patients. These treatment sessions are 4 to 6 hours long. So by giving a sublingual film that kicks in pretty quickly, patients aren't waiting around maybe for an hour or so. So it reduces some of that already long treatment time. And we can also give much less active ingredient sublingually, which means that potentially fewer side effects. We'll see as we get through clinical studies. But I think it's more than that. It's good to be at that clinical stage. That's always exciting for investors, not just something that's theoretical. But we've made it pretty clear that we want to be driving the next generation of molecules beyond psilocybin.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, it'd be great to have some develop a treatment with a faster onset of action, perhaps a shorter treatment duration, maybe an hour or so, and a good side effect profile. I mean, it's really getting to that stage that will enable us to provide broader access and more scalability of these treatments to patients in the future.
Exciting times, to say the least. Well, listen, I know you're busy. Thanks for taking in the time to sit down with us today. Congrats and good luck with the listing tomorrow. And tell the NEO team I say hi, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for having me on again. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Doug.